have been continuously talking about vaccine racism and the fact that, vaccination and acceptance of mutual verification of Indian vaccine is important. Now let's dwell into the details of this. All right, let me start with Sumit Peer. I have actually joining me Preity Upala, who's the editor of The Observer and a geopolitical analyst. I have Dr. Dheeraj Kaul, who's a data mining clinical researcher and a senior physician. I have Colonel Shailendra Singh, who's a global strategic and defense expert, Sumit Peer, who's a political commentator, and Joyita Basu, who's an editor of TSG. All right, let me start with Sumit Peer. Sumit, now vaccine racism and the fact that India has exported to several countries and aided them during the peak of the pandemic is a fact that cannot be denied. Yet when the whole world was affected by it, India came forward, and now their Indian vaccine is not being accepted. There is blatant vaccine racism. What are your thoughts on this?
You see, a couple of points around it. The first point is that when world needed HCQ, we sent HCQ to 175 countries, and most of these countries we sent it free of cost. We are not in the business of making money out of pandemic. We don't breed viruses. We don't want to make trillions when the world needs the medicine. We have sent our vaccines to around 100 plus countries, and 33% of the supplies went free of cost. We were the ones who produced the cheapest and the most affordable vaccines as on date. We are the ones today. HIV is out of the world. It's courtesy India. India, you're 90%, more than 90% of the supplies to the African and the underprivileged countries go from India. HIV is rooted out. It's courtesy India. We have saved not people now. We have been saving people from decades because of our supplies, and we are not in the business of making trillions from the vaccine. We are not going with $2 billion like China and looking for scapegoats. Why don't you use my vaccine? I give you $2 billion loan, and my vaccine has 73 side effects. We don't do that. So the India's commitment of Vasudevam Kutumbakam, of Sarve Sattu Niramaya, is not as saying ye kahna nahi, it has been proved on the floor of the world. We have shown what we intend. That is what is about, and what is seen the mathematics of it. Emergence of India as a pharma superpower is irking a lot of people, Aarti. We like it or not. 7.5 trillion industry is pharma, growing at a CAGR of 10%, 10 to 12%. Look at last 8-10 years of data. Now, when you come at a global stage and you are giving supplies to 175 countries, you are sending HCQ, your vaccines go to 100 countries. The tyranny is that the same Indian vaccines, which are being exactly the same chemical formula, been given to UK or some other countries, our vaccination certificates are not recognized. At times they say, oh, we'll not recognize people with the Indian vaccines. Then say, okay, now the certificate is not put on because the certificate doesn't have all the details, while as our certificates has all the details. The problem is that when you emerge at the global stage, this industry is a 7.5 trillion industry. And let me remind you, the global GDP is only 96 trillion. So if you emerge as a world leader there, and with your shifting persona and aura, where people across the world have seen India as the pharmacy of the world, as a pharma superpower, everything is being done. Everything is being done to stop India. I'll tell you one thing. Vaccine produced here with the formula XYZ and the same vaccine produced in UK with the formula XYZ. Chemistry is chemistry, it doesn't change with geography. So still things are being done, expulsions are being cast, spanners are being put. Last time European Union said, oh, people vaccinated in India, we do not recognize. Then when Dr. Jaishankar picks up a phone and calls some people, suddenly, the chemical formula of vaccine starts changing. The people who were telling us Indian vaccines are not good enough, now they started changing. The question I want to ask these people, what happens when the External Affairs Minister picks up a phone? How does the formula of a chemical compound sting in a while change? This is what it talks about the blatant politics. Everything is done to stop India. Why is UK casting these aspersions? Because we produce the cheapest vaccine. We have the highest producing capacity. And when people like Bill Gates say, for the next pandemic, the factories will be running out of India and India will save the world. The emergence of India, the emergence of Modi, a lot of things what India does good at, and India's main principle, we are not here to make trillions out of vaccine. We are here to cure the humanity. That is why you are stopping it. You don't want us to dominate the pharma industry. It is controlled by people in US. So this is what is the problem is. And let me ask you one question. Aarti, I've been always saying on Newsx. Imagine you have all the money in the world. Who on this earth would have given you 1 billion doses? We have inoculated more than 800 million people, which is twice the US. And our people who have been given double shots is more than US, which 200 million. Joe Biden said 182 million. So when you are emerging at the world stage and all the people try to pull us down, say, oh, India cannot do it, the vaccines are not good and all. China went with money bags and still they could not get scapegoats. टांगा ड्राइवर इन पाकिस्तान से नहीं, खुदा के लिए छोड़ दो, मुझे चीनी वैक्सीन नहीं चाहिए. This is what is happening in the world. The pharmaceutical lobbies, a lot of powerful people in the world, do not want us to dominate this industry because this is an everlasting industry. And President Biden is very clear. He says there will be a new pandemic. So who is going to protect the world? Where is the ramp up? Where are those capacities? Who is producing 60% of the total vaccines? Is India. So this is what is happening in a lot of world, and that's what they are trying to do everything to stop us. And these casting aspersions is casting finer doubts. Oh, Indian vaccine is good, but it is not so good. Oh, Indian certificate is good, but it doesn't have details. What this hypocrisy is all about? I mean, this is utter hypocrisy. When you asked for HCQ, we sent to 175 countries. Did you come to inspect our factories? Did you want to see the formula? No. When we donated 33 million doses of vaccines across the world, who came to India to see our formula? No, that time it's all good. But when we are emerging, when we have come out of the second wave, bright and clean, now you get politics into it. That is how a phone from External Affairs Ministry changes the formula of the compound sting in a vial. That is the new magic of the world. And that is what is the reality of this about. There is racism, there is a racism against India, but India will prevail. India will prevail, and the last point I want to make, we have saved the world from HIV, and India is not doing it now. We have been doing for last 30 years, and all the new pandemics, God forbid, I hope and pray do not come, and all the disasters coming to the world, the pharmacy of the world is India, and affordable pharmacy of the world is India, and India believes in Vasudevam Kutumbakam, Sarve Santu Niramaya, let the world be disease-free, and we have proved this on the floor of the world. We are not here to make trillions out of it. We don't look vaccines to make money. That is what our intent and intention is all about. Aarti.
Right. Let me rope in Colonel Shailendra Singh. Sir, now do you think that the Quad summit, the Modi, Prime Minister Modi is bilateral with several leaders, are opportunities now for India to put its foot down and say, recognize our vaccine? Unmute yourself, sir.
This vaccine warfare which has suddenly started in the world, I tend to agree with Sumit Pirji. It is anti-India, no problems. But by saying this is not adequate. अगर मैं चिल्ला कर भी बोलूँगा हर चीज में China is destroying the world, and अगर मैं बहुत ज़्यादा चिल्ला कर भी बोलूँगा कि Pakistan is the only terror state, but that's not adequate. It's already known. I request, let us open up in a little different way. By competition, business, etc., इस particular vaccination में आ गया है world over. We need to be smart enough to fight it. Whether it is a external affairs minister's call, or it is lobbying by our prime minister, or you do a lobbying on an economic front, you do it on whatever front. Like I just now in the previous session said, that what is Quad? Does Quad has got anything to do with army? No, it doesn't. It's our strategic relation between the few countries who have got together for their personal interest, for their strategic, personal, country-wise interest. इसमें से कोई दान दहेज नहीं दे रहा है. Everybody is party to it for their own reasons. They are protecting themselves. So similarly, if we have to talk of that whether the Quad will be able to influence the vaccination, I think that will be wrong. I would not like to let India be on that kind of front the way China is, or for that matter Pakistan is. I've been always saying that Pakistan is a super terror state of the world, or let us be a super state counter terror in this world. भाई ये बढ़िया बात है कि वो टेररिज्म कर सकता, मैं काउंटर टेररिज्म नहीं कर सकता. What is this? So similarly, if at all vaccination warfare has to be fought, we should know that on what lines people are against us. Let's neutralize them. Very simple. If the UK does not want to recognize a particular formula of ours, there are 110 other formulas which I also can refuse to recognize on UK front. देखिए, वर्ल्ड ऑर्डर में सबसे बड़ी प्रॉब्लम यह है कि जो सिर झुकाकर इज्जत से आपसे बात करेगा उसे कमजोर समझा जाएगा. अनफॉर्चुनेटली, you need to be strong. Why do you keep an army? So that others don't interfere with you. Why do you have a strong economy and aspiring to be a super economy? Why? So that the world accepts you, recognizes you. If at all, we were talking about that, why not become a superpower on technology. How will you do that? It will not come on its own. You need to create R&D in your own country, and R&D of the world class, better than world class. Then people will recognize. How does your army become strong? It becomes strong because they are well equipped. They are good in numbers. They are well trained. They exemplify themselves on ground. Vaccination is no more exception. You see, the humanitarian part will remain. लेकिन मैं क्या करूं? जिसको humanitarian part नहीं दिखता, उसको सिर्फ अपना business दिखता है. अगर उसको उसका business दिखता है, let us beat him at that. Because if China understands only economic terms, then let's hurt him there. And I don't say hurt him there by bringing him down. No, I'll take myself up. I'll go up. Okay, what's the big shot? If the UK says this compound in this particular vaccine is not acceptable, why not acceptable? Let us discuss. Let us refer it to a third party. Let us take it to any particular analysis. You see, there is always, yes, politics will play. So if politics will play, we might as well be very aggressive on that political front. We need to tell that country that what are you talking? We can also do that and we will hurt you more. But we are not in that line. So let us do good for humanity.
Right, of course. Let me open Preity Upala. Preity, do you agree with the good colonel that, and do you think that the Quad has an opportunity and must now prove its influence to vaccine diplomacy? Unmute yourself, please, Preity.
Namaste. Thank you for having me on your show. It's always a pleasure to be here. Wonderful to, on the eve of the Prime Minister's great visit to the US, I think it's great that we're able to discuss these very important matters. Now, this is going to, I agree with both Sumit Pirji and Colonel as well, all very good points being made. This is actually a great opportunity for India to, I think firstly be honest about what the Quad can and what it can't do, but at least from our perspective, to sort of assert ourselves on a couple of different fronts. Of course, the security, defense, Indo-Pacific is one thing, but as far as the vaccine story goes, two important points. I think the Prime Minister will make these points very loudly. Firstly, is to waive the trademark sort of requirements that are currently in place today, because the last thing we want during a global pandemic when millions of people are dying is countries saying, I came up with it first, this is my formula, I own this, so I get to license it or make all these billions off of it. So that's something that the PM will really push for, to remove that. So truly it's a humanitarian effort, and I think India has done a great job in sending the vaccines all around the world, many free of cost, to developing countries, and they are truly grateful for. Now, the other point that the PM is going to push is for some of these richer economies to really, I think what they've done recently is put a stop to raw materials that need to be sent to a country like India, so that we can manufacture them and then in turn send them to other places in the world, as well as for our own population. And that had been happening for a while, but I think recently there's been some issues. That's the last thing we want, is this sort of blockade. I mean, what is this? I mean, the world needs to come together and should be aiding a country like India that wants to do good in the world and be a force multiplier, rather than sort of stall us and really almost sabotage our great humanitarian efforts. So he's going to push these 2 points, I think, as assertively as he can. And I think everybody's on the page. I'm listening to President Biden, and I think he's understanding India's role in this whole geopolitical game as far as the vaccine situation goes. And I think time and again, the US has said, we have India to thank. They are definitely our partners in this. And, we are the pharmacy farm in the world, right? I don't want to say we're a big pharma, but we are the pharmacy giant in the world, and the only one that the world trusts to really heal the world, so to speak. So I think this is a great opportunity for the PM, but I want to see more than just speeches. I want to see him sort of really put his foot down on these issues and get something signed, some statements, some agreements on these and other issues. By the end of this, this UNGA and also the Quad meet, I think the PM should go back to India with several things that he would have accomplished. And I really look forward to seeing that. So let's see how the next several days unfold.
Right. Very interesting points put forward by you, Preity. Firstly, I'd like to address Joyita with this point that mutual recognition of vaccine is a but obvious step, right? Firstly, do you think it's a very real outcome? Like Preity said, signing agreements and getting it done as soon as these set of meetings, these set of summits are over, do you think it's a very real possibility?
Well, when you are looking at it, I think first of all, we have to see what kind of a treatment is meted out to Covaxin. Because you see, it is not really about Covishield, because Covishield is AstraZeneca. But in spite of that, what the British were doing in all their racist mindset, they were stopping Covishield just because in spite of the fact that they have themselves imported 5 million doses of Covishield from India for their own population, in spite of that, they had struck off Covishield from that list. Now, look at Covaxin, and when you compare it to the Chinese vaccine, say for example, Sinopharm. Now, what is the report that is coming from countries that have used Sinopharm? It is disastrous. When you look at a country like Seychelles, which is apparently the most vaccinated country in the world, in spite of using Sinopharm, what they have done is that 60 to 70% of their people have contracted COVID in spite of the full dosage of the Sinopharm vaccine. Sinopharm has landed in trouble in Brazil. Sinopharm has the same problem has happened in the Gulf countries, particularly UAE, I think. So Sinopharm has it's like a history sheet. The Chinese vaccine is like a history sheet. Now, in spite of that, WHO goes and gives it emergency approval. Compared to that, Covaxin, it's a solidly good Indian vaccine, but it is yet to get that kind of recognition from the WHO, which is kind of delaying the thing. And you see, this delaying would not have happened. Now we have to think in terms of from where is this pressure coming? Is it coming from the Chinese? Now, if it is because you see, if we are talking about the Dr. Tedros guy who heads the WHO, who is completely under the thumb of the Chinese, so he is not allowing WHO, our Indian vaccine, Covaxin, to be there because it is very effective. It's a good vaccine. They want the Chinese vaccines to capture the market before India, especially in the poorer countries, because it's not the rich countries do not have a problem. The rich countries have got enough vaccines to vaccine themselves twice over. I think Canada has got, 5 times over. That is the kind of stockpile they have built. While the rest of the world, African nations and all, they have not got any vaccines whatsoever. So these are the markets that China is looking at. So you see, Covaxin and Indian vaccine has two problems facing in the world market. Number one, this is the competition coming from China, and number two, big pharma in the US. Okay, let's not forget their role about trying to take on the Indian pharmaceutical industry. Let's be very, very clear. And US may be a great democracy and all sorts of things, but pharma industry, when it comes to it, there are definitely industries and forces that work against India. Let's be very clear about that. In spite of the US, in spite of China, we are now the vaccine hub of the world. In spite of them, not because of them. Okay? So the thing is that, you see, when you are looking at us like that, frankly, okay, Mr. Biden may be delivering free vaccines to the rest of the world. It's excellent. He's excellent that he's doing it. But let us hope some kind of pressure will also, this recognition for Covaxin in particular, that also should come into play during this visit. And I hope at the United Nations, at the level of the UN, because WHO is ultimately a UN body, although in spite of the fact that UN is totally controlled by China nowadays. So when it comes to vaccine, you see, a good product, you cannot keep it down. Something whose time has come. So when it comes to Indian vaccine industry, India's potential, even for India for that matter, our time has come. However much we are blocked, our hurdles are erected on our path either by the US or by China or by anybody. I mean, you cannot stop us. Okay, and this is the message that should go out to the world.
Absolutely. On that note, let me rope in Dr. Dheeraj Kaul. Now we're talking about, like Joyita said and like Preity said, the fact that when it comes to actionables, when it comes to providing vaccines to the world, if it's a good vaccine, you cannot ignore it. When you do a lot for the world, international community, you cannot ignore it. Now, Dr. Dheeraj, do you think technology in vaccine should be the next focus as we focus on nasal vaccines and administering vaccination through other forms? Do you think that is the next focus so that India can then improve itself and step up its vaccination game?
Yeah, and that's a very smart question. Actually, I've spoken about it a few months ago because the vaccine delivery mechanisms are various. Intranasal is a very good example, for example, because the way the mucosa works is we have an immunoglobulin called IgA, and it's very effective because COVID enters through your respiratory tracts, oral mucosa and respiratory tracts. If you have enough antibodies, which are called immunoglobulin A, it can even block the entry of the virus. So they may be very efficacious. That's issue number one. Issue number two, there are a lot of people who don't want to get jabbed. Believe it or not, there are many people who have hesitancy against an injection. That's two. Number three, you can even self-administer it. You don't have to go to people's, clinics or vaccination centers to do it. So it's very easily administered. And the new second and third generation vaccines, about which I've spoken recently on a couple of channels, they are coming at a level in which you can even have an oral pill which you can order from online and get delivered to your house. So there's a company called Vaxart. There are many other companies. I don't want to name them because I do biotech analysis for some of those. So it will be, controversial. So I'll not go there. But there are many companies in the pipeline which are working on that line. But having said that, December 2020, I had an interview on, I think, ABP or NDTV or Aaj Tak, one of those channels. And I spoke in detail, actually January 2020, when they came out with phase 2 trial results of Covaxin, which was excellent. You have to understand, mRNA technology is a very new platform. We are very new to using it. And I totally support they work excellently, but Covaxin's platform is a dead virus, okay? We have used it for decades. The safety protocol is excellent. And one more thing I should tell you, when you expose, what are we doing with these viruses, with this mRNA platform? We are actually loading on a nanoparticle, which is a nanolipid, injecting in you. It's taking a messenger RNA, which is a code, and it tells your cell to make a spike protein. That's it. And that mRNA eventually dilutes down and finishes off in your cell in few days. The spike protein stays on for a few months, and after 6 months, the efficacy goes down. What happens if the virus mutates big time and the spike protein changes totally? Luckily, that has not happened yet, but it's a matter of time before it happens. That way, if you are exposing your body to the entire virus, if the spike protein changes, rest of the information your immune system will still have and be able to fight the rare variants and the new mutants way better. So that's a very big plus of Covaxin, safety profile and antigen introduction format, which we call in terminology, as in more information of the virus is delivered to your immune system. So those are very big pluses. And if you look at the data, which phase 3 trial data come, it's a no-brainer. So I, any day, as a data miner in healthcare, I can debate with any WHO officer any day to give me facts why it's not recognized. Forget about US or FDA. FDA said finish your complete trial and give it to us. I'm talking about WHO. We have an ex-minister of health who's one of the leaders in WHO, and I'm very confident in his abilities. I want to figure out which powers are stopping WHO. They should be exposed, because you're denying an entire planet with cheap, cost-effective vaccine which works. And trust me, there are so many people in America where I'm sitting right now. They are very skeptical about mRNA platform being used on their bodies. There are at least 60 million people who have refused vaccination because they have this hype in their mind that it's a new platform, it can alter their DNA somehow, which is not true. But at the same point of view, they are way more comfortable with conventional platforms which have been tested for decades. And the number one leader in that platform is Covaxin. I cannot get my mind around Who in WHO, which kind of genius is sitting in WHO and blocking these moves? It doesn't make sense to me at all, and I would love to debate with any single scientist who can come and explain me why WHO, forget about CDC, World Health Organization, it should not listen to a single body, it should listen to science and science alone. I want to listen to that guy. That person has to be exposed. Somebody just said about Tedros, absolutely true. He has failed the planet. He's still serving as a WHO head. I think he should be worked in Geneva Convention against crime against humanity for not controlling this epidemic. Look at the leader before that. She did amazing work. She was a female. Amazing work in MERS and SARS, which was way more deadlier. SARS is way more deadlier. Mortality rate is 12% than COVID. And because of her leadership and WHO's strict contingency, we were able to stop. But somewhere, because of political agendas, I will not go in tangent, it was let to fly under the radar, and every single person on the planet is suffering. Mortality is huge, not to talk about the cost deficit of $16 trillion for US economy. I don't know how much countries' economic will be devastated by this. It has to be exposed, WHO has to be brought to justice, and Tedros need to be booked. I am not even scared of him. Sorry.
Right. Preity, now what do you think can be done in terms of actionables by India and US together to then, increase, like you said, it's good to make speeches and sign agreements, but what can we do in terms of actionables?
Yeah, great point. I mean, wonderful points by everyone. I think this is where India needs to step up on the global stage. We do a lot of good work behind the scenes and very quietly. I think that's the Indian way, I suppose, but I don't think that way is going to work anymore. The doctor was right. 30% of Americans have refused to take the vaccine. That's almost close to 100 million Americans. I live here in Los Angeles, and even in the state of California, there's a lot of anti-vaxxers and people who are very skeptical, and yet at the same time, all of them talk about India. They talk about alternative solutions that have worked. They just talk about whether it's Ayurvedic or also homeopathic or even non-vaccine related cures and protection. And India is on everyone's minds. So it's just a shame that the powers, higher ups are, they know about the conversation that's going on, but they're not doing anything about it. I think the PM and his team, and especially the MEA, needs to really, in their conversations, especially when they're talking about Indo-Pacific and defense and all these other very important points, they need to push what to its counterparts in Japan and Australia as well, because they are very much on board with what India is doing in the world, and they're willing to support India, I think. And also, I think it's time for India to make other alliances. I've spoken to some foreign policy experts, and they say there is a big case for a mod quad. So you have the quad, which is great, but in parallel, you can have a mod quad where India can rally in whether it's other Southeast Asian countries, or even look to our partners in Europe, France and Germany in particular, especially France and maybe even Israel, because these countries are very much on the same page. They, respect what India is doing, I think, on the global stage. So we need, I think, this time of non-alignment. I don't really know how much it's worked for us in the past 75 years, but no one's asking us to take sides. But I think it's time for us to really diversify our friendships and strategic partners on the planet at a time when the world needs us to step up. And we are one of the few countries that has the bandwidth to do anything that's going to affect the world at large. And I think we haven't stepped up to the plate, to be honest. There's a lot of talk, but I don't think we've asserted ourselves in a way that we could. Also, the permanent seat. Look, I know people criticize it. Take what you can get. Push for it, and even if you get a seat with no veto powers, take it. It's a first step. You can move on from there, move forward, and try to leverage and manifest more opportunities for yourself. But I think I'd like to see some official statements, something in writing, some policy changes. You have to waive what you need to waive. Mutual recognitions of certifications and all of that. These are very basic minor things that I think India has a lot of it has leverage, it's holding the cards. And it's funny because India is fine. I mean, much of our population has been vaccinated. We have recovered, I think, tremendously well. And so it's not about India anymore. It's the rest of the world that's suffering because of these blockages and issues. And we should make the point that this isn't for us. This is really for everybody else who's suffering, and we're only here to be the messenger. So, let's see how our diplomats do. It's been a hit and miss in the past, but I have a feeling that I think we're gonna push our case a little stronger this time. So I have full faith in our team, and I just think that time and destiny are on our side. So I'm eagerly waiting to see how things unfold.
Right. Joyita, do you think now if we get the Quad countries to accept the Indian vaccine and to verify it, do you think then it can put pressure on countries like the UK, who are then saying, we can't accept the Indian vaccine as something that's official?
When if you're talking about Covaxin, because you see, it cannot be accepted by any country unless and until it gets the approval from WHO. Unless and until it is on the list of WHO vaccines, because all the vaccines that are being administered around the world right now, I mean, except for individual countries having their own vaccines like Covaxin, all of them are WHO approved. The reason why it is so important to have the Covaxin accepted by the WHO, and we have been hearing for months now, actually, WHO is about to say yes to it. And, this is where business and commercial interests come into place. And once WHO gives authorization to Covaxin, it will be easy, I hope, to send these vaccines to the countries, to the developed world as well, in the so-called developed world, if I can say that. No, but at the same time, when you are looking at them, this is where the big pharma interests come in. Certainly the big pharmas, which are kind of now have control the vaccine market in the US, in the UK, and all that, they do not want an entry for Covaxin. So what I think we are going to target, our target market will be in, say, for example, the countries which will go for cheaper vaccines, the countries that cannot afford the vaccines marketed by the big pharma companies, the big corporates. So I think these are the countries that we will be looking for. And let's not forget, a major part of the planet is still unvaccinated. You see, luckily we are Indians, we have our own vaccines, we have the manufacturing set up for Covishield, which is Oxford AstraZeneca, which is being manufactured here. It's because of that, and our own Covaxin. That is the reason why, we have been able to, vaccinate over 83 crore people. 83 crore plus people have already been vaccinated. So that is one of the reasons why the rest of the world is not so lucky. Outside the so-called developed world, people are not so lucky. In the African countries and all, as I mentioned earlier as well, people are not lucky. And unless and until you are able to inoculate the whole world, unless and until there is an equitable distribution of vaccine, this particular menace known as the coronavirus is not going anywhere. Because it has to, a certain level of herd immunity has to be achieved. Until and unless that happens, in India, it has happened, it is being said, to a large degree, herd immunity has been achieved in certain regions, and with vaccination and because of the infection, we are perhaps moving towards herd immunity, and certain areas have already achieved herd immunity. But that is not the case. Vaccination does play a huge part in terms of giving people herd immunity. So I don't see these countries, India will be sending vaccines, their manufactured vaccines to these countries, but yes, it's a huge potential out there, and it's not just a case of earning money. In this case, it's not a question of earning money. It's a question of helping the world out. We have been, before the start of the second wave, we were sending free vaccines to so many countries. Covishield at that time. So the thing is, and obviously there will be some skepticism about Covaxin unless and until the WHO gives a certificate. But this whole trouble that happened with the UK, frankly, that is totally racist and colonial mindset of the US that triggered that nonsense. That they were, importing Covishield from India and giving it to their people. 5 million doses they are taken from us, and they are stopping Covishield. Because it is, not allowing, considering people vaccinated with Covishield is unvaccinated. That is typical UK, typical racist mindset of the UK. So we are yet to see what final kind of travel advisory comes out from the US. I will be very disappointed that if the US also does some nonsense like the way the UK has done. But no, I don't see these countries really going for Indian Covaxin and all, but the rest of the world will.